Hey guys, this is Swamp Cleaner Harry here, and today I was going to put aside the current events, and I was actually going to talk about an event that I've gotten myself familiar with in the past couple of weeks, and a lot of you might know what it is, some of you might not, and that is on February 28th, 1993. The ATF raided the Branch Davidians at Mount Carmel, and it's 25 years. And it's actually, wow, I'm actually shooting this video, and I didn't realize it was actually midnight. It's now 12:01, 8, 2/28, 2018. 25 years to the day of the fateful raid that sparked 51 days of confusion, stupidity, lies, broken promises, a lack of understanding, and in the end, a complete and horrible tragedy. But, um, I've really taken to what happened at Waco because I myself am not one to believe in authoritarianism, not by a long shot. I'm a libertarian. I'm conservative leaning, but a libertarian. I believe in freedom, liberty, everything that makes America great, the right to freedom of speech, the right to own firearms, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, right to be secure in your own papers, in your own residence. Fifth Amendment I don't really like. People like to get to cop out on that one, but we all know they have something to hide if they don't want to incriminate themselves. But anyway, we're beside the point. Anyway, um, but you get my drift. I am for the Constitution. I am for Americanism. And when you have a population who is very diverse, extremely diverse, you have people from all over the world emigrate to America to live here. I mean, it shows how open our society is. So, I mean, screw the racism, screw the xenophobia arguments from all these people from the social justice aspect. I mean, that is just asinine. We are an open and welcome society, and that is a blessing and a curse. Because sometimes when some people stray from the norm, I mean, there's an average. I mean, and some people choose to live a different lifestyle. And the Branch Davidians were the kind of people who lived a more than unusual lifestyle. They had a uh, very profound religious um, aspect. They had a very strong belief in what they believed in because to the Branch Davidians, the Bible was literal truth. What the Bible said is what they would interpret that to happen, and if they saw signs in real life that coincided with what Scripture said, then they believed that is another step towards the end of times, and they acted on this accordingly. They had a lifestyle of independence. They worked for themselves to make money. They weren't dependent on other people. They worked together. They had a community. They had a actually a quite decent sized number of people at the time when this incident occurred at the not not the compound. That's another thing. Language is another thing I'll get into. But they were driven by Scripture to act accordingly and live the life that they chose. And David Koresh was the man who was leading them at the time. He had a very interesting road to the Branch Davidians that I don't think I'm going to cover, but all this information is out there. And mainly I'm making this because since it's the 25th anniversary, it is time to reflect and recap and look upon what happened and send it along to the next generation of people, because I was talking to a couple of people that I work with today, a bunch of kids, people 18 years old, 16 years old, teenagers, and one of them knew what Waco was, the other one didn't. One knew was, and what they all what the one who knew what it was just what his dad said in an off-the-cuff couple remarks when he wasn't really paying attention or caring, just telling a bunch of people got in the wrong with the law, and they were they were driven to kill themselves because they believed scripture was coming true. Well, that is the story that at the time the FBI and the government would like to give you, and now, as everybody who really does know knows the actual truth, that a lot of this was mismanagement, fumbling of negotiations, one hand doing one thing, the other hand doing the other, saying, hey, we want to work with you. The next day, we're shutting off the power. Don't worry. Hey, we'll give you milk. We'll give you milk. But, oh, look, we're shutting off the power, so guess what? The milk's going to spoil. Yeah, you want to feed the kids? No. Shut down the power. See, that makes a whole lot of sense. But that happened a lot in this case. There was a lot of bumbling, mismanagement, and the reason for that is because it was supposed to be like that. It was designed like that because the guys who designed this, the ATF, and then later the FBI, who had to come in and pick up the pieces from what the ATF had done, they didn't care. They were looking out for themselves because, long story short, the ATF, they winged this thing. They literally winged it. They were in a bad way because just 6 months prior, a little incident called Ruby Ridge occurred. And the federal government, especially agencies like the ATF and FBI, were under scrutiny at the time because there was a lot of concern that there was too much authoritarianism among federal law enforcement, and that Ruby Ridge was an example of that, of overkill and blatant attempts to hide evidence and skirt blame, and it runs completely through all these incidents. You can see signs, and I looked up Ruby Ridge too. I mean, that's a whole another incident that I've recently become very well informed with. The man at Ruby Ridge was screwed. He was fucked over by the ATF. They tried to squeeze on him, force him to get inside the Aryan Nation and inform on them. And since he didn't, they screwed him over on illegal gun charges when apparently he after being influenced by an ATF agent, cut, I think, a quarter or a half inch off of a shotgun and pretty much sawed off the shotgun. Oh, illegal weapon. Now, he didn't comply, and they came down on him like a sack of bricks. Shot his son because they shot his dogs. Then they shot his wife after they shot him and his friend. Yeah, it's just, guys, what's with all the shooting? words do work, because Bo Bright showed up and he was able to convince Weaver to take the rest of his family and leave. So, but the one problem with Waco is that they were making progress with words. They were working. And then the tactical side, the ATF that was under the control of the FBI, asserted pressure. So hey, we're here, we are trying to de-escalate the situation, but we're going to bring tanks, we're going to roll them up here, we're going to just, run over some of your cars because they are tactically inconvenient for us because it gives you cover somehow. So we need to remove that. Oh yeah, you buried a guy because in the raid we shot him. Oh yeah, we're gonna run over his tanks. We're gonna run over his grave with tanks. And remember, these are extremely religious people that you're dealing with here. So desecrating anything that has religious tone to it, like desecrating a grave, is very, very no. No. That's a very big no. You don't do that. If the one thing you don't want to do is piss them off, then don't run over the graves of their dead. But anyway, I've got a lot of emotions, so I'm gonna dial this back in because I've gotten really into this, and it really is saddening because at the time, based off of what happened with Ruby Ridge, there was going to be congressional appropriation hearings and that was directly related to whether or not the ATF was going to be getting funding. And a lot of us know that if funding is getting cut from something, Obamacare, hopefully it's going to be gone soon. Bye. Anyway, when you cut funding to things, they kind of sort of had to shut down. So the ATF was in freak out mode. We need to figure out a good PR story. We need to find a real knee slapper that will get everybody on our side again. A real, holy, are you serious? We just saved like 50 kids from a bunch of crazy cult religious people who have a bunch of guns, and they could be dealing drugs and abusing those children. Of course, no drugs ever found, no child abuse ever recorded, let alone the pedophilia from David Koresh, and that is something I don't agree with. Pedophilia, no. Doesn't matter if it's you're taking that burden on from the other husbands and men. They say stay celibate, but I will take on the burden because I am the Messiah. I will take on that burden so everyone else can focus on reaching the goal. But that's just my opinion. No, David Koresh, if you want to talk about him, yeah, he was a pedophile, and he should have gone to jail if he was arrested and charged with sleeping with underage kids. But then you got gray areas because common laws, and that's a whole other bundle of wax. But anyway, that's besides the point. The ATF needed this awesome raid to go down where they can get a bunch of really bad people arrested and get a lot of illegal guns off the streets and save a bunch of children at the same time. But they had a week. I mean, they planned this raid in a week, even though they were watching the Davidians for a while, because they popped on radar because of the amount of gun parts that were being mailed to the compound, and the feds were picking up on that. So they sent out a team to surveil the area, but they gave them really shitty cover. And this is a part of the hastiness of this, and that the half-assery. they give these guys cover, like, oh, we're living in the middle of almost nowhere. We're 10 miles from town. We're a bunch of college students, even though we are well out of the range of being the age of college students. And then we're not going to school in typical hours, and we're just sitting inside all day. Yeah, that's not what students do. So the cover was shaky to begin with, and the Kresh and the Davidians were suspicious. So they have this stupid stakeout that already raises suspicions. And then on top of that, Koresh, months before, like I think it's July of the year previous, yeah, July of the year previous, invites an open invitation through his gun dealer to invite the ATF to inspect his weapons. And they say, no, I don't want to do that, no. Because we are looking for a nice PR stunt that will give us good ratings because we need to be funded. We're an agency. We're the government. We don't disappear. We just keep growing. That's what the government does. So we need that money. So, God, this guy's he's got legal weapons. They could possibly be getting modified. They've got parts for grenades, but who knows what they're doing? Like, we're just gonna assume that these guys are up to no good, and just write this up, like write the warrant, slap the wrong U.S. Penal codes on there because hey, we gotta do this quickly, and make 2/3 of it about penal codes against child abuse and stuff. But so they were going to charge him with child abuse and all these things that are not related to the ATF, because the ATF is alcohol, tobacco, firearms. Child abuse, domestic services are not in their realm. That's separate. So you can see where this is screwed up from the start. And then the major stupid straw is to allow this raid to go forward on February 28th, to allow the raid to go forward when the Branch Davidians know that you're coming. Because it's pretty fishy. If you're trying to keep it low key, why are you going to tell the press the night before that there's going to be something happening in Middle Texas near Waco tomorrow? Like, if there's going to be something, federal agency's going to be doing something tomorrow. Ooh. Holy. Well, let's get the news crews out there. Hey, do you know, hey, Mr. UPS driver, who happens to be the brother-in-law of David Koresh, and a news guy asks, hey, which way to the Mount Carmel compound? And he's, oh, why? Cause there's something going on? He's like, what? And they didn't even know. The news crews didn't. They just knew something's happening. We gotta be there. And then boom, hey, the Branch Davidians get tipped off. The undercover guys find out that the Branch Davidians know. Let the guys know that they are made, but hey, let's just go anyway because the children. We got to think about the children. We got to get those illegal weapons, and we got to stop these drug-dealing, crazy cult members. Doesn't that look off? Doesn't that sound great on paper? That sounds really, really great on paper. But then it goes to shit, because it's hard to wrap your head around it. We use excessive force in Ruby Ridge. How do we make ourselves look better? Let's use more excessive force. Let's use helicopters this time. Let's use big old horse trailers lined with agents. They had like 100 men. And they trained them for 3 days at Fort Hood. So They rolled up on the compound. The Branch Davidians know. Koresh went out there. He was going to say, hey, we wanted to talk. These guys rush up. And there's all this speculation, but it's already known now. But back then, it was so fierce, the fighting back and forth. The ATF fired first. Like, we're defending ourselves. And that is what Wayne Martin said to the 911 operator. We were getting shot at by like 75 men. Then the ATF is saying, they fired upon us. We were moving in, and then they were firing. It sounded like they had cannons, and we had pea shooters. Oh, the humanity. Feel sorry for us, that the poor agents of the ATF who were shot. Not even showing a warrant, just running up with guns pointed, guns drawn already. But hey, remember, 2/3 of it we're here for the children. But hey, we're going to be here for the children with M4, M16s, Berettas, Glocks, full body armor, like MP5, submachine guns, tactical gear, flashbangs, gas masks, the whole shebang. But hey, we're here to protect the children, right? Yeah. So anyway, the ATF assault, they try to get into the compound. They actually enter the compound, and then they get driven out by AR-15, I do believe, like AK-47 fire and stuff. Like, the Davidians had themselves decent weapons. I mean, I think it was mostly matched. Whenever they said, oh, we were outgunned, and the Branch Davidians never said they were outgunned. But the ATF was like, oh no, we're outgunned. I think it was actually pretty even. It's just that the ATF ran out of ammunition quickly because they didn't assume that this was going to be a drawn-out, long gun battle. They thought this was going to be a pushover. They were going to use super, uber, over-the-top force, get everybody to get down on the ground, put them in zip ties, get them up, get them, like, up in front of the cameras, say, hey, look, this guy, he's got a cult leader here, he's got, look at all these guns, like, photograph all the guns, bring them all out, like, ooh, look, here's the guns, do all the good stuff with them, get them all riled up, and then send everybody to jail, and hunky-dory, hey, we just got ourselves some federal funding. But no, that didn't happen. They ran out of ammunition. The Branch Davidians were the ones calling 911 for a ceasefire. And that's another thing. If you're going to go raid, where you need communication, even if it goes really, really well, you want to radio back and be like, hey, bring in the rest of them. Bring in all the media, bring them here. Nobody had a phone, nobody had nothing. And it doesn't matter, why do you need a phone? I mean, I know cell phone service was a thing back in 1993. I mean, it's a little shoddy. I mean, it's nothing like we have now. Like the cancer-emitting phones we have now, the one that I had to throw on the floor here because it's vibrating like crazy. But nobody had a phone. But beyond that, you're a fucking federal agency. Don't you have a fucking radio? Doesn't anybody have a radio in any of the trucks or the cars that they were driving in? Any special agent with like nothing, no radio to go? Hello? Like, were you planning on maybe even killing everybody there? And then just wiping it right then. Who knows? But no. That boils down to poor planning again because of the speed. Like, they had to wrap this up really quickly. So the ATF finally ran out of ammunition, called a ceasefire. In the end, 6 Branch Davidians were killed. 4 ATF agents were killed and 16 were wounded. And then we moved into the next phase, which is the siege. What we call the siege, because that's what it was. I mean, by that time, after the raid and the deaths of these ATF agents, emotions are running high. The FBI shows up, just like it's kind of like the Fed showing up on local law enforcement. We'll take it from here. You can just sit back. If we need you, we'll let you know. So you can feel for the idea. You just got your asses kicked. You got a bunch of your guys got killed. A bunch of you, even more, got wounded. And now you're being told you guys suck at what you do. So we're taking over from here. And that's another thing. Why is the ATF still around? How did they come out of that still as a functional agency? That's something that boggles the mind. But anyway, I digress. So they got all banged up. The FBI takes over, and you just have a bunch of teenagers. Like, well, that's what they weren't literally teenagers, but they acted like teenagers. During the siege, they're sitting there all kerfuffled. They bring in the tanks, like I said. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Hey, we're here for the children again, but no, this time now we're bringing in tanks. So we're driving our tanks around. We're giving you the finger. We're mooning you. We're doing everything. We're being a bunch of freaking jackasses. And you're doing that to a bunch of religious people, strict religious people who don't smoke, drink, no drugs whatsoever, and no sex. No sex either. Not just for one man though, but no sex for any other man. Now that is restraint. That is somebody showing that they have faculty of themselves. So, and these people have children, and none of these kids were abused because a bunch of the kids that got out of there, like when they were in the temporary, like, holding area, before, outside family members can come and claim the children, or them holding the children until they can get the parents out of there to reunite them. These kids were laughing with each other, playing, all happy, and these kids aren't, like, the FBI could tell these kids aren't being abused, so that's a blatant lie. The only thing that's questionable is Koresh's actions as marrying girls underage who are 12 and 13, having kids with girls who are like 14, 15. Yeah. But yeah, so these people, other than Koresh, who was hypocrite, but he got too far into it. Like, okay, I'll get back to Koresh, but these people see these pretty much what they amount to hooligans outside running around being a bunch of idiots. Do they really want to send their kids or themselves out there? They don't trust these people. All they've seen from them is rolled up, hey, we just shot your dogs, now we're shooting at you. And then all we get is lies on television saying that we are a bunch of cult people who are abusing our kids. And then we want to get the milk. You don't want to give us the milk, and then you say that we don't want the milk. Bunch of lies. So they see the Branch Davidians at this time see these what they as hooligans. They see the federal officials, agents, as a bunch of hooligans. Like, they don't trust them to uphold the law, so they're not going to send their kids out there. In their mind, the kids are safe and sound right where they are. And at that point, each side gets more and more entrenched to the point where negotiations go back and forth, and they just start breaking down. Koresh starts getting visions. Well, not visions. God's talking to him, telling him to wait, and then he needs to write the 7 seals. His interpretation. And I think that, in a nutshell, would have ended it. Because, from what I've seen, from all the sources, David Koresh was narcissistic. I gotta say, he's slightly narcissistic. He believes he's Messiah. And he read the scriptures so much. He read into it so much that I believe that he started interpreting things that weren't there. He was, there is a thing called over preparing, like over like studying too much for a test, and then you're so sure that then you become unsure. He was so into it that I honestly believe that he interpreted things that were only able to be accepted by him and a few other people, and that be the Branch Davidians. But what happened is everything that was transpiring was what Koresh interpreted as the seals opening and the end of days coming. So they welcomed the events that transpired. Well, no, it's not like, okay, they didn't welcome, but in a way they did. But they didn't avoid the events and um, the pieces of the board putting themselves together to create the perfect storm of the inferno that was the final day of the Waco siege. But I'll get to that in a little bit. But as I said about Koresh, he was so sure of himself that he was able to be overbearing, but in that kind way, in that genuinely overbearing way. Like, it's like that gentle giant that can't, like Hagrid. Like, he's a gentle giant. He wants the best for you. He wants you to, but if he wants you to, he can make you do it because, you know, he's like a freaking, but that's a giant, so he can just woo, flick you. But that's what Koresh was mentally, so like psychologically. He was the Goliath to their David. But he was such a strong figure to them. He was the one keeping them there. His second in command, Schneider, was the one keeping everybody sane. Because Koresh was so, like, such a good orator. He could mix the practicality with the... No, he could mix reality with the literal passages of the book so well that he was able to convince people who weren't crazy, he was able to convince smart people that he was on to something. So that draw was so powerful that it was inevitable that once he said no, I'm not going, barely nobody's going to go unless it's like really, unless you got kicked out. Like, a couple of them actually got kicked out. Because one guy was found out to be drinking. Can't smoke, can't drink, no sex, no drugs. So you can be kicked out, so you fall out of the good graces of Koresh and be kicked out, or he'll give you pretty much a religious scorning if you left. So, I mean, everybody left with a bitter taste in their mouths because Koresh was feeling that these people were giving up the bigger, more important purpose for the physicality of the now, and he felt like everybody who did leave was letting him down. So he had a certain resentment, and that's why he would act cold. And he was getting much more distant, definitely throughout the course of this thing. He was relying more and more heavily on scripture. So I mean, he wasn't going to budge. But if you got an angry beaver like trapped in his den, you don't start hacking away at it with an axe, okay? They cut the power. I mean, the FBI, the negotiators, like, okay, we're working together. We got you the milk, and then we shut down the power. Milk spoils, but these people can live without power. They can live without running water. So you're not depriving these people of necessities per se, and making them desperate, you're just pissing them off. So they're going to become more entrenched. But getting back to the mentality of the FBI and the other officials who were there, it became blatantly clear, the mismanagement of this entire thing, that it was nothing to do with protecting children. This had to do with revenge for the death of federal agents. So they didn't care. They acted brazenly. They pushed and pushed and pushed to deprive them of sleep, deprive them of their own thoughts. Because if you blare music and dead animal noises 24 hours a day, blinding light, you're going to drive people, to a very weird, peculiar edge in their mind. And of course, it's completely logical that the one thing you want to do is push somebody to the mental breaking point when you yourself consider that person already mentally out there. Yeah, that's logical, perfectly. So the actions of the FBI shows clear as day that the end goal was nothing to do with de-escalation and getting the people out of there. It was to finish the narrative they started, that these people were crazy cult people. So we are going to conveniently use their own scripture and passages against them, because one of the in coming days, they understood that the end of days was coming, and they would go and transcend to heaven. Sometimes it would be through a wall of fire. So the FBI did nothing to avoid creating the inferno, and neither did the Davidians. So there's a little blame on the Davidians, because they were pretty much, just like a passive protest. You'll lie down in the road, but then if a car runs you over, well, you did lie down in the road. So but they didn't embrace it. This is like, please hit me. They didn't embrace it. It was an event to them. It was just the next step. And the FBI, being the moronic hooligans that a lot of them were, who were at Waco, were all gung-ho. Hey, we're going to get you out of here. This is not an assault. On the day when they started the CS gas attack, and CS gas is flammable. It even says, don't spray this inside, it will explode, because it's mixed with methylchlorine, which, when this stuff burns, it turns into cyanide gas, like a form of cyanide gas. And I've seen images of some of the dead bodies twisted and contorted from exposure to this stuff. So how these people were exposed to super high concentrations of CS gas for hours and hours and hours on end. These guys smashing into their compound. Why am I saying compound? See, that's the language. And of course, you know what? Little side note. The FBI used language like cult leader, compound, like cannons, heavy weapons. We had like, oh, we were defenseless. They made the Branch Davidians into the bad guys. But hey, we're here for the children. We're the good guys. But yeah, on the 28th, when we were flying around and we were raiding on you, yeah, there was like a 17-year-old on the side. Yeah, we shot him. He was a kid, but no, we shot him. So, but wait, we're here for the kids. But anyway, they knew what they were doing. They were spraying a highly volatile chemical into an air suspended in an aerosol into this center, this Mount Carmel. And they were doing this for hours, so the entire area was coated with this stuff. And then these guys are also firing ferret rounds, which are incendiary, pretty much CS rounds, to shoot into individual areas, not like if they see something. And this is what they said. They said if we saw movement in the windows, we shot at it. We shot it with the CS gas. But then they say, oh, we never fired a shot. Oh, but they mean, oh, we never fired lethal fire. But yeah, when we look at the FLIR footage, and that's a whole other thing. You guys want to look at the FLIR footage? I'll put links. That's what I'm going to put links to everything. So everybody who does not know about Waco, who wants to be informed, can get informed. And a lot of these things will just blow your mind. But these guys were causing this situation to literally come to a head, and you can watch on the FLIR footage. They were just rolling around, punching holes into the side of the building, tearing down the walls, driving into there, and then people running around outside by the tanks, shooting into the compound. So even if people wanted to escape, they had to deal with tanks driving all over the place, and some of them were run over and mutilated, and their bodies were crushed and crumpled by the tanks. And that's fact. But if you wanted to try to escape, you can't. You got tanks destroying stairwells, and if you're on second floors, you can't get down because, you know, stairwells are destroyed and crushed. People are getting, you know, probably hit by debris, getting crushed by debris. And then there's people on top of that, outside the tanks, shooting at anybody that moves. And they still shoot at people when the fires start. And it's completely, utterly unimaginable what it must have been like inside that place. For hours and hours and hours, you're getting suffocated by gas. I mean, they had gas masks, but they could only work for so long. I mean, the thing, and none of those gas masks were the size fit for a child. So a lot of the kids were exposed to this for hours on it. A lot of them probably just died from the exposure because they said they found a few of the bodies that they could halfway examine before, you know, they conveniently all decomposed because somebody forgot to keep the refrigeration unit that they stored all the charred and mangled, mutilated bodies. The storage container, they forgot to keep it plugged in, and yeah, all the bodies just decomposed. So most of that evidence was destroyed. Mostly, it's just pictures from what we can see. But a few of the bodies that were examined found that a lot of them didn't have any soot or like smoke inhalation in their lungs. That means they were dead before the fires ever started. So yeah, and people were found with gunshot wounds. I mean, Koresh was found with a gunshot wound to the head. Did he commit suicide? Did somebody shoot him? Was he shot by a sniper? But I can't imagine what those 6 hours were from the morning when it started gassing to when the entire thing went up. And yeah, we held the fire trucks back because we didn't want them to get shot at. Well, by that time, I don't think any Branch Davidian could do any shooting, and the only people who were doing shooting were your guys, because you were shooting into the compound, making sure nobody else could leave. So you guys set up pretty much a massacre site. That was a massacre, in my opinion. And in the days that followed, it was complete cover-up. The door to the front of the compound, I'll call it a compound, fine. The door to the front of the compound was conveniently missing, which could prove Who shot first? Oh, the footage, the videotape of the raid of February 28th. Oh, missing. Sorry about that. Then you have the videotapes that the Branch Davidians made of themselves during the raid or during the siege. They were withheld because, hey, these would humanize them and it would give them sympathy and it would work for them. So yeah, we're gonna hide that evidence. Like I said, yep, of course the bodies were improperly stored and they decomposed. They had sniper logs. Like at some point, half the day was missing. Like, no logs. None of the ATF agents during the February 28th raid ever wrote a statement of their events that happened. I mean, how can you not sum this up as something fishy is going on? And you even have FBI negotiators coming out saying that there was a breakdown in the FBI between the negotiators and the tactical side about being on the same page. And this was just jerking the Davidians around to the point where, yep, we're not going anywhere. So you had 80 plus people die. For what? For what again? You possibly have modified illegal weapons, and you're probably abusing children, even though we don't have any jurisdiction on that. And then a bunch of the Branch Davidian survivors get 20 to 40 years in prison for murder of federal agents, even though a lot of them their sentences were cut short. They were still like railroaded by the government. I mean, and that's where the whole mantra of don't trust the government comes from. I believe you can sum up that statement in a nutshell. And I'm going to go to Ruby Ridge as an example. When Sarah Weaver was coming out at the end of it all, when Randy finally decided to surrender, and she completely trusted her father. She didn't trust anybody else but her father. He said, "Let's come out. They're not going to shoot us. They know what happened. Vicky's dead. They just want it to end. It's got to end." She stepped out, even under the assurance that, you're not going to get shot. She thought, my life is over. I'm going to get shot right now. Because the actions of the government over the course of a couple of years, in her case, cemented that idea. Don't trust the government. And that is in its most potent form. There are many different levels of not trusting the government, but that is quintessentially the highest degree. Anyway, I hope this might give a little insight or make people interested in looking up Waco. I was enthralled by this. I completely dove in. I'm still diving in. I still have things to find out. I'm sure a couple of my friends, I know it's you, Dave, you'll tear me a new one. I guarantee you there's somewhere in here that I did something wrong and you'll tear me a new one on this one. But please do. But I'm still learning about this and learning how deep the rabbit hole goes in the actual level of deceit, backhanded, and corruption. And for an example, you have the likes of Chucky Schumer and Joe Biden back in 1995 during the first congressional hearings about this, which all ended up in a nice, neat little bow of, oh, they just did a suicide. They killed themselves by setting themselves on fire. That's how that ended the first congressional hearing. It was reopened because of a new Waco New Revelations, and that's a documentary I will link. But you have the likes of Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer, run in defense for the ATF, run in defense for the FBI, and Chuck Schumer not even knowing what a damn flashbang grenade is. How dumb are you? Flashbang. It's a concussive force. It needs to explode to make the flash and the bang. So, yes, it's not like it's a explosive grenade with shrapnel that can kill you like within like 25 feet. Like, this thing is still lethal, but within like 3 feet. If this thing goes off near your head, you're yeah, it's gonna turn your brain to mush. You have it in your hand, it's gonna blow your hand off. Yeah, those things are lethal. And he's like, oh, everybody knows as a fact that flash bangers are not lethal. They don't kill. And then the next guy up, a Republican, asks this ATF agent, hey, I got a piece of Play-Doh. Can you hold this? Now, would you be comfortable if this was a flashbang? Would you be comfortable holding that in your hand and letting that explode? He's like, no. Why? It could kill me. Oh, okay. Thanks for that. Hey, Chuck Schumer, foot in mouth. And it's like and it's funny to see that you're the same back then as you are now. The swamp was just as stinky and just as deep back then. It's just now we have social media and we can call these motherfuckers out immediately. But even now we're getting censored. Even now we're getting squeezed, and we need to find ourselves alternative areas. But anyway, I hope you guys liked this. I hope that you guys appreciated me doing this, because I figured it would be warranted to do a video, especially since it's the 25th anniversary of what happened. So, anyway, I will just wrap that up. This is Swamp Cleaner Harry, and you guys have a good night.